Welcome to Calcio FC, your weekly dose of Italian football and culture. This week, we take a look at foreign ownership in Serie A and discuss whether the old lady needs a fresh approach. But first, it's Sampdoria, and to help me, David Ferrini, I've got in the studio with me the resident writers of Destination Calcio, Emmet Gates and Dan Cancian. We're going to have a look at why Leonardo Semplice's side are struggling to find wins. No wins in 14, guys. Mr. Stephen on Instagram, he says, never a dull day at Doria. Dan, take it away.
Yeah, there is never a dull day at Doria, but there have been very grim days this season. As you said, no win in 14. It's hard to see where the wins are going to come from. Samp can't stop conceding goals. They've conceded the second most in Serie B. And they can't hang on to a lead for love nor money. They dropped 21 points from winning positions, which explains why they are only 3 points off the bottom of the table. And it's just plainly not where they wanted to be. So they invested big money in the summer. Everyone was looking forward to them being back in Serie A, or at least challenging for promotion, but it's all gone pear-shaped. They're on their third manager of the season. It may not be the last.
Yeah, and I mean, Calcio USA, one of our devout fans out there. If you haven't checked out his pod, go and check it out. He talks about Cittadella, but he put up an interesting stat on X last week, and he mentioned the running order of the teams that have lost. They've dropped the most points after being ahead. Sampdoria right up there, and they were 2-0 ahead against Mantova on the weekend. The De Paoli, the captain, scoring the brace, and they just couldn't keep it together in the second half, Dan.
Yeah, I think it's got to the point where there's so much pressure on them that even when they do go ahead, they always have in the back of their minds sort of like, well, we're going to crumble, and they do. And it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy because, you know, they desperately need the win. But as I said, they can't go into a lead. You can't see where the wins are going to come from. Beating Mantova away would have been a great result for them, given the way all the games went. But they can't get over the hump, and they've got lots of injuries. To be fair to them, Totino is out. A lot of Semplice is missing a lot of key players. But it's just not good enough for them. Is it a club of their size?
Niang coming in, new signing, coming back from his stint in Africa there.
Yeah.
And we saw him at Empoli last year. Scored a few goals there. That's what they brought him in for. He's now playing Serie B, previous star of Serie A, a couple of different phases. Now, third coach of the season, Leonardo Semplice in charge, still yet to get his first win in Serie B. Let's rewind time, Emmet, because at the start of this season, for Destination Calcio, we went down to the south of Italy, and Andrea Sottil hadn't been brought in. You saw Sottil in Genoa when we went there, but before that, Andrea Pirlo saw him in Salerno in that press conference, and it was that deadly day for him. They went down, and then he was shortly dismissed after that. Have you seen any change in the style of play? Or, I mean, in a microcosm, we could look at the season and say, well, it started off brilliantly because they did okay in the first few weeks, a few good positive results, but then we've seen that dip, and now it's draw, loss, period of draws, another loss. What do you make of this? And take us back to the start of the season when we were in Salerno there.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously were there for the 3-2 game, and it ended up being Pirlo's last press conference in charge of Samp. And I mean, I thought the decision was harsh, considering the season was only 3 games in. You know, as you said, David, Sampdoria hadn't done too badly. And you do think it was a rash decision. You know, they brought in Sottil. The results didn't get any better, really. They haven't won since the end of October. The style of play has generally got worse. You know, when you looked at it at the beginning of the season, you know, the Totino and Massimo Coda, and you're thinking, yeah, there's a lot of Serie B experience there. They know how to score goals. You wouldn't necessarily thought that Samp would have been in the top 2 positions, but certainly good enough for a playoff place. But it's just the way the season's unfolded. It seems to be getting worse and worse by the week.
Well, you look at their squad; they've reinforced at the beginning in this summer. They brought in on loan. They brought Ioano in from Como with Belemo. I mean, absolute soldiers of Serie B. Got Como promoted. Now, what is Matteo Manfredi? What direction is he going to take this club in? Because we know Sampdoria supporters, it's a huge club. It's in Serie B, and it kind of brings you back to that Parma feel. They eventually got back up, but Sampdoria, when we go back to a previous time when they got relegated, maybe a couple of times ago, in the early noughties, they had a Francesco Flacchi type player. Now they've got Coda, as you said, they brought in Totino. The goals are not coming. Now Niang's there. where's Manfredi going?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how they get out of the situation. He's come into the club. He bought the club from Massimo Ferrero, and the whole saga that went on there. And he's invested around 55 million euros in buying the club. They're looking to buy the Marassi with Genoa, but I think obviously this is Italy. There's ongoing problems with the city council and putting in a bid, and I think there was an issue of Sampdoria and Genoa putting in the same amount of capital. There was issues with that. Has not been sorted, but I don't know where they go from here. I think you would hope that Samp will stay in Serie B, but as Dan alluded to, the results are not coming. They haven't won since the end of October. And I mean,
currently 5th last.
Yeah, like they're either drawing or losing. It's hard to see. It's hard to see where the turnaround will come. But I think Manfredi has said that he's in for the long haul. He sees a lot of potential in Sampdoria. He used to be in the Italian army, and then he moved to London, and he worked at PwC and Barclays, and he obviously has money. And as we've seen with the signing with Niang, he's willing to do what it takes to get Samp for them to survive in Serie B. Then maybe focus on next season. But I do think the chances of seeing Sampdoria in Serie A next season are very, very slim.
Very slim.
Unless they have a remarkable turnaround in the second half of the campaign.
I know that there are certain clubs, and I think Sampdoria are one of them, where you look at them and you're thinking they're too big to go down. It's just not going to happen. Whether it's a club in Serie A or a club in top flight anywhere in Europe, you look at them and you're thinking they can't possibly go down just because of their status, because of their history. And it's the same with Samp in Serie B at the minute, but they could actually go down. And we've seen it in England so many times, big clubs like the likes of Leeds, the likes of Sheffield United, Sheffield Wednesday, huge clubs, huge fan bases. They go down to second division, then they drop down to third division, and from then it's an incredibly difficult task to come back because, yes, as Emmet pointed out, Sampdoria have got loads of potential. They've sold over 18,000 season tickets this season. In Serie B, you need it's an incredible amount of people to have in the ground, but that doesn't get you 3 points. It only takes you so far. And my worry with Samp is that yes, they've spent a lot of money, but have they brought in too many players? I think you can make too many signings if that's the case. And one of the criticisms of Sottil was that he didn't know his best 11 because he just kept chopping and changing every week. And you need, if you look at the likes of Pisa, the likes of Sassuolo, even the likes of Juve Stabia, they have a settled 11.
Let's rewind time. If we go back 35 years, back to when Diego was winning it for Napoli, we saw their trajectory. They went straight down. Within 7-8 years, it was all over for Napoli. Bankruptcy, the rest of it. It needed an Aurelio De Laurentiis type to bring them back, and it took them 18 years after that to even win a Scudetto. Let's go to Sampdoria's rich history, the 1990 Cup Winners' Cup, the 1990-91 Scudetto, 4 Coppa Italias, and we saw Milan win the Supercoppa a couple of weeks back. They won the Supercoppa. So that's how good they were, and you would expect them to at least be still up there in definitely the top half of the table of Serie A. Fabio Quagliarella, one of their talisman for 8-9 seasons. Without him, I mean, they were relegated in his last season, but surely someone has to stand up now and take them forward. Let's see what they can do this weekend when they take on Cosenza. But if you haven't seen the Serie B highlights, go and see Mantova Sampdoria on the DC TV app and also on our YouTube channel. Let's move along. This is the Calcio FC podcast with me, David Ferrini, and Destination Calcio writers Dan Cancian and Emmet Gates. From a team who can't buy a win, guys, to one who's just encountered their first league defeat of the season at the hands of the league leaders Napoli. Glorious win for them. The comeback win at the Maradona. New signing. That's a kind of a fresh approach for Thiago Motta there. Getting Kolo Muani in, scoring on debut. Not a bad first half there for Juventus, but I think the stats tell a different story in the second half, Emmet. I'm going to let you say your piece here, but Thiago Motta was the fresh approach, wasn't it? At the beginning of the season, we've seen how many times the hashtag Allegri out. How many people have tweeted that? I'm sure if you're probably watching this and you're a Juve fan, you've probably done it yourself. But Emmet, Thiago Motta's there. You've written about this on the DestinationCalcio.com website. Take it away.
I mean, where to begin?
With a violin or?
I mean, Thiago Motta was brought in, and it was supposed to be a fresh approach after 3 years of Max Allegri's minimalist approach to football, and Corto Muso winning by a horse's hair. Thiago Motta was supposed to be this new, not so much a evolution, but a revolution. And obviously he'd done great things with Bologna, and he's come in, and it's, yes, every manager needs time, but I think the fact that Juve sporting director Cristiano Giuntoli went out and spent over 200 million on players really hasn't did Thiago Motta any favours, because again, like we're talking about,
does it add pressure?
Yeah, it adds a lot of pressure, and he's constantly chopping and changes. Like Dan mentioned with Sotil, he's constantly chopping and changes, and not the formation, but the players within the system. And he hasn't got the best out of many of the players that they've signed. Tion Koopmeiners has come in for a lot of criticism from Juventini because he's been played too far forward, and I wrote about this for Destination Calcio. He's better in a double pivot, in a 2 further back, where you can see more of the game. But he's playing with his back to goal, and that doesn't feed into his characteristics. It's not what got him 15 goals in all competitions for Atalanta last season. But that's on Motta. Motta is not getting the best out of Koopmeiners. And Koopmeiners was Juve's most expensive signing, 60 million. And he's not seeing the best of him. Douglas Luiz has hardly got a kick and could leave on loan back to the Premier League this before the end of the window. There's rumours of Man City. There's rumours of Nottingham Forest. But Douglas Luiz has suffered a lot.
Big chunk of change.
Yeah, and he was 50 million as well. And Juve gave away 2 youngsters in the deal to sign Douglas Luiz. But I feel for Douglas Luiz because he hasn't really been given a chance. I think he started 2 games all season. He's been injured, yes, but I feel like Thiago Motta hasn't done himself any favours by the constant changing and not using players in their proper positions. So a lot of people a lot of Juventini think that if Allegri had been given that 200 million, Juve would be in a lot better position. The football probably wouldn't be as attractive. Not that Thiago Motta's version of football is any more attractive, but I think Allegri would get results. I mean, Juve have drawn 13 games this season. They suffered their first defeat against Napoli, but you're not winning many games either. You're not losing, sure, but you're not winning, and football's all about winning.
And I think that Venezia performance, when they drew with Venezia with that last gasp penalty, that was a symptom of something. Perhaps there's an infection in there. Maybe there's something in the dressing room that's really not. There's no connection there between some of the players. Dusan Vlahovic, big money signing coming up from a Fiorentina side where he scored goals just as a hobby. Hat-tricks and braces every week, and with a side that doesn't have the depth of a Juventus. Now, just on the Koopmeiners issue, you wanted to play him as a double pivot. Can you see him forming an alliance with Locatelli? Because I remember the De Zerbi Sassuolo side, Locatelli was immense as a double pivot there. And Sassuolo they qualified for Europe under De Zerbi there. Motta is that kind of coach. So can you see anything coming out of that? A double pivot, Locatelli, Koopmeiners, or maybe someone else in the lineup? I
do think that's the one thing I will give credit to Thiago Motta for, is that Locatelli has arguably been Juve's best player this season. And you've seen the old Locatelli, at Sassuolo when he played in that double pivot. He has been fantastic, but it's usually alongside Khafren Thuram or Weston McKennie. He's rarely played Koopmeiners in that double pivot. And all Juventini, I'd said the same thing, that is where Koopmeiners' best position was. That's where we seen him last season with Ederson. Sure. When Atalanta won the Europa League, he got 12 goals in Serie A. He was the top scoring midfielder. So you just think, why not try Koopmeiners and Locatelli in the double pivot and play someone else in the number 10 role? And going back to Vlahovic, I just think there's been a serious disconnect between Thiago Motta and Vlahovic, because Thiago Motta wants more from the strikers than Allegri did. Obviously, we've seen with Joshua Zirkzee of Bologna last season, a striker that can come short, touch, lay it off. Vlahovic doesn't do any of that.
He doesn't have that touch to distribute passes either, does he?
Exactly. He's just about putting the ball in the back of the net. And also, when you play for Juventus and you're going to Empoli, who have 2 banks of 4, and the space is tight, Vlahovic doesn't have the technique to dribble past a couple of players and put the ball in the back of the net. It's just not, he doesn't have that in his locker. So I think at Fiorentina, it maximised his skill set because teams would attack Fiorentina, they would leave the space, he would go in and score. But Juve play differently, and I think what Motta wants in a striker like Xerxes, Vlahovic doesn't have those characteristics. So it's not surprising that it looks like a divorce is on the cards in the summer, and also the fact that he's the highest paid player in Serie A, he earns around 12 million net a season.
Yeah, that's big money for Serie A as well. Can't compete with the Premier League clubs either, so we could see him make a move. He has been linked with one in the past, but Vlahovic, we've got Kolo Muani in there, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Emmet said. I feel for Motta in a way, like Vlahovic, to start off with, it's not, I don't think he would have signed him, but he's basically, Vlahovic is on the books. He's not going to go anywhere in Serie A because no one can afford him. And Motta's got to make the best of a bad situation. And as Emmet said, he's clearly not a player he wants. He doesn't fit his football. I also think that Motta's been dealt a rough hand in a way because it's come in after Allegri. The honeymoon period was like, okay, you're not Max Allegri, which is great, And he had just like maybe a month, maybe 2 months where everyone was just over the moon with him not being Allegri. But then it went from, okay, you're not Allegri, great, to, well, show us the revolution we've been promised. And I don't think he ever promised the revolution, or if he did, it was going to take time. And, he's just not had enough time to implement his system of football. I think he's got signings that he needs to blend in with the existing players. And as we know at Juventus, you don't really move players in and out of the starting 11. There's a lot of pressure behind the scenes. There's players who have been there long before he arrived. And I think there is also an element of, what have you done? Who are you? You're Thiago Motta. Yeah, you've done well Bologna last season, but you're not a world-class manager. Not, at least not yet. You're not like Jose Mourinho. You're not like a Simone Inzaghi coming in. You've won trophies before. You can sort of say, okay, this is my team. I'm gonna go ahead with my philosophy, and whatever the consequences. He doesn't have the option, and I think you can see with Juve, but you could see on Saturday, the moment Juve went ahead Napoli, this is probably one of the first Juve games I've seen in a long time where you never thought that Napoli weren't going to come back. There's no aura about them. When they go ahead, you're always thinking, okay, are they going to hang on to the lead? It's just, it doesn't feel like they are the Juventus of years gone by. If you know
No
what I mean.
shots in the second half. You may have thought it was a Allegri ball for a while. So.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. Like, if that was Allegri, he would have been crucified for it.
Do you think it was preservation, just trying to lock up a result? Anything but a loss was okay for Motta? Take it back home. It's a league leaders. It's an away game.
I think it was, and I think that goes to show what I was saying about his mentality. I think he may be a world-class manager in the making, but he doesn't think like the manager of a top club.
Well, it's also that point that Dan's touched on, that former Juventus players have come out in the past couple of weeks. Alessandro Birindelli, Angelo Delivio, they've said that Thiago Motta is not obsessed with winning, which is what Juve's mantra is all about. It's about winning. It's not about style. It's about substance. But Thiago Motta doesn't have that in his locker yet. And that's what you need at Juventus. As both of you pointed out, the aura has gone. You never felt like when Juve took the lead against Napoli that it was convincing that Juve would. If that had been under Allegri, you probably would have said, yeah, they'll hang on just about. But they don't have this. This version of Juventus does not have that obsession of winning.
Time to get your views about what you think about Calcio, Serie A, Serie B, Serie C, doesn't matter. Get on our social media platforms, Facebook, X, Instagram. Get there, get involved. Anthony DeZino on Facebook. He says, this is truly awesome. Just found the app last night and watched the full replay of a game. Serie B, of course. Such a great league. I'm a Calcio fanatic. Inter Milan is my team, but love seeing the lower levels of Italian football. Don't we all? FIFA Plus, you can watch Serie C on that. Of course, we are the official broadcaster of Serie B, Destination Calcio TV app. Let's move along. And also, make sure you get your second team. Everyone needs a second team in Serie B. If you don't have one in Serie B, go and get one. Ryan on X, with Kyle Walker joining Milan. Boys, I'll throw this to you. Can you say which Italian players will have the most success having gone the other way? Federico Chiesa at Liverpool. Emmet?
Well, I think we can safely say it won't be Federico Chiesa at Liverpool. He has massively struggled to adjust to the pace of the Premier League. He's only played 190 minutes in all competitions. I think he got his first start against Accrington Stanley in the FA Cup. He Chiesa's never really recovered from his cruciate ligament injury. You know, he was in and out of the Juve team. Arne Slot gave him extra time to prepare to get to the grips with the pace of the league. So, yeah, I don't think Chiesa's time at Liverpool is going to be judged a success.
Well, I mean, let's throw back to the 90s, the days where Serie A players used to go over there and just carve up, light it up. The English First Division, the Premier League, was a different animal back then. Gianluca Vialli, Roberto Di Matteo, Fabrizio Ravanelli, goals galore. Now we've got Sandro Tonali and Riccardo Calafiori. Dan.
Yeah, I mean, Tonali has been superb for Newcastle this season. I think when you look at the way Newcastle struggled last season, you realise how important he is in that midfield. They've got such a physical midfield with, Guimaraes and Joe Linton. And it's just been, Tonali's looked like it's never been away.
His goal at the weekend was fantastic.
That's beautiful movement off the ball.
He's added goals to his game, which I think is what Eddie Howe made clear at the start of the season, that he wants the midfield to contribute with goals, and he's definitely done it. And conversely, you look at AC Milan's midfield and you realise, how could they do with Tonali in that midfield? Calafiori's it's not been brilliant, I won't say. It's hard for him to get regular football at Arsenal because Arsenal was just settled back four. But when he's played, he's done okay. He's come up with a couple of crucial goals. Scored at the weekend against Wolves.
Wasn't it a goal against Man City? He scored it as well earlier in the season.
He scored against Wolves. And, he's doing okay. I think I don't think we can say that he's been superb, but he's definitely been a positive for Arsenal. I think the player who's actually the Serie A import, who's not Italian but is doing the best in the Premier League, is Justin Kluivert, because he's got 11 goals in 22 for Bournemouth.
And it was a slow rise, wasn't it? That crescendo now that we see.
Yeah, it was. It was at Roma, obviously, in 2019. He went on loan to 3 different clubs, picked up by Bournemouth.
Go the Cherries.
Yeah, it's been superb. As Huijsen's his teammate again. It was at Roma. It was Juventus next gen. Was let go for about £9 million, and he's been probably one of the best centre backs in the league this season, to the point where Juventus have been linked with him.
I did see that Juve have been linked. They just sold him.
Yeah, no, it's bizarre, but yeah, it's been superb.
We always like to bring you a deeper dive into specific topics here on Calcio FC. Joining me, David Ferrini, is Emmet Gates and Dan Cancian. We're going to talk about American investment, foreign investment, but mainly American because they have the majority stake now of Serie A, you would say. 9 American owners in Serie A. There's a couple of others, Canadian and also Indonesian. Let's we'll talk about 3 of those American-owned clubs. Dan, which one are you going to talk about?
Well, I think the Friedkin Group in Roma are fascinating for a variety of reasons. Obviously, they came in 2020. They spent 460 million on taking over the club. And I think the jury is very much out on them. They've obviously, they've just purchased Everton. The jury is out on them there as well, although they probably have more credit in the bank at Everton than
That's
they
brave.
would at Roma. It is. I mean, it's also bizarre when you think about it, because obviously we know of club owning other clubs, like Serie B being case in point. They own Palermo, but Everton and Roma, they could have actually play in Europe against each other in, maybe not next season, but in a couple of seasons they could face each other in Europe. So it's a strange paradox where you have a company that owns such massive clubs in 2 of the biggest leagues in Europe. I mean, when they took over Everton, everybody rushed to sort of compare Roma under the Friedkin Group to what Everton may look like. What are they doing at Roma? Well, they've had a bit of a tough time, haven't they? They've got Paulo Fonseca in, then he was gone. And the issues this season have been well documented, when De Rossi, who replaced Mourinho last season, was gone after a month. Juric came in, he lasted less than 50 days or something, and he was gone as well. And now they brought Ranieri in. So I think the Friedkin Group have said that Roma was very much a learning curve for them in football.
Did common sense prevail with them, with Ranieri?
I don't know whether common sense prevailed. Short-termism definitely prevailed.
Or do you think it was a matter of we need to save face here? I mean,
yeah, I
it
think
didn't work out.
There was an element of that. Okay, we need to get the Roman buy-in, who the fans won't get angry at, and it kind of deflects off us then because we've brought back Ranieri.
Well, yeah, I think that's an interesting element about them, because one of the criticism that has been aimed at them is that they don't really know who they're dealing with. Roma, they basically, I think that they misjudge how much the fans mean to Roma and like the delicate environment within the fans and the club themselves. They got rid of De Rossi after 4 games this season, and that was after he came in to replace Mourinho last season and did really well. Took them to a European semi-final. And then they got rid of him, and they had a revolt, effectively, on their hands.
Because I think the thing was they sacked De Rossi, and there was so much backlash, because I think De Rossi basically lost a political battle behind the scenes with the sporting director, and such was the anger towards her that she also resigned, and she had to get police protection from the Romanisti.
Yeah.
I think the Friedkins, as you said, Dan, underestimated the sheer passion and the size of Roma. And I think for a while they did get it right in terms of ownership. But I think this season they've really let themselves down.
I think they misjudged you, definitely. But on the other hand, they've spent a lot of money in the summer. They spent 100 million, and that is something that it's rare to see in Serie A these days. We were talking about foreign owners. There are other foreign owners that have not been anywhere near as sort of like happy to spend money,
as hands on. And do you think Roma supporters might be a little bit disgruntled? They've gone and spent some money in the Premier League on Everton.
Well, you probably would be, wouldn't you?
Well, you know a few Evertonians yourself.
Yeah,
don't you?
I do, and they are very much wary of anyone who comes in with big promises. To be fair to the Friedkin group, they have not actually made any particular promises yet about Everton, which I think is a refreshing change for those of for Evertonians. But you would be disgruntled if you were a Roma fans, because, the Friedkin groups are obviously very well off. If you can buy 2 football clubs, you've got deep pockets. But how deep do your pockets need to be to compete in 2 leagues like that? Because you're not going to get away with signing players for 20 million quid in the Premier League if you want Everton not to be fighting to avoid relegation every season. Likewise, if you're a Roma fan, are you going to be happy with players coming in for like 10, 15 million quid?
Well, there could be fears that Roma could become a satellite club. Let's move on just quickly. We should mention that Everton, there was a fight between, well, I don't know if there was a fight, but they were definitely negotiating at the table at the same time that the 777 group was trying to get it. The former Genoa owners, we should mention, no longer American-owned Genoa. They are now owned by the Romanians, the Burcu.
I believe that's how you pronounce it, yeah.
I'm not sure. Apologies out there if you're watching, Mr. President. But so Genoa now owned by Romanians. We have a list of American owners. You'd like to talk about which club?
Fiorentina. I think they've been interesting under Rocco Commisso. He's obviously Italian-American. He lived in this. He's from Calabria. He lived there until he was 11 or 12 and then emigrated to America, built up his fortune, founded Mediacom, and then decided to come back and put some money back into his country.
The great American dream, and then he comes back,
Exactly. And he bought Fiorentina, I think, was it 2019?
Yeah.
2020?
Yeah.
And he has put his money in. He's built the Viola Park for, I think it was 80 or 90 million euros. It's one of the best training facilities in Italy.
Funded it with a bit of that Chiesa to Juventus sale as well.
Yeah, and Vlahovic probably too.
Yeah.
But I think Commisso has been exasperated by his attempts to build a new stadium in Florence, just like every other owner of Italian clubs. There's political fights with the government and promises that go all broken. But Commisso is he's not afraid to speak his mind. He has shown his frustration with how things are done in Italy. Even Lega Serie A meetings where apparently he said that it's 5 minutes of actually talking about issues and then the next 55 minutes is just battles back and forth and discussions and nothing ever gets sorted. So he has been, obviously, if you do business in America where things get done and then you transfer that to Italy where things often don't get done, he is finding it a frustrating time. But he has put again, like Dan said about the Friedkins, he's put his money where his mouth is. He steadied the ship, in terms of Fiorentina. Their finances are very good. They're now, under Rafael Palladino, they're kind of pushing for a Europa League spot. They've got the 2 Conference League finals in succession, lost them both, but they still got there. So I do think Commisso is one of the better American owners that's been in Italian football.
There's a long-term vision, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think obviously, as the viewers will have seen, the Artemio Franchi's actually undergoing construction now, but there is 55 million that's missing because the EU pulled funding. But there are discussions with Comiso and the council in Florence. But Comiso wants basically the whole project's supposed to cost 100 million. He said he will upfront the rest, but he wants concessions that he wants to own the Frankie for 50 years and obviously take all the match day revenue that comes with that and being able to add in shops and modernize it. Whether that happens or not, I'm not really sure. But yeah, Comiso, I think, is definitely one of the better owners.
And it should take him through a tidy little nest egg to take him through till about 130 years old. You think?
Well, I mean, when you compare it, as Emmet said, Americans, when they build new stadiums, for example, for the NFL, and trying to build a stadium in Italy, it's literally chalk and cheese because a lot of NFL stadiums are funded by their American equivalent of the local council, the local authority, puts a large portion of the bill. The stadiums are always built on time. They are stunningly modern facilities. And then you get these elements in Italy where he may have to pay out of his own pocket for a stadium that then he may not even be able to use.
We've got this issue in with Fiorentina in Florence. Rome also looking to get a new stadium in there.
Yeah.
There's been proposals, plans, San Siro. Let's get on the subject of Milan. We know that Inter now has been, I guess, with the Suning issues, fell back to Oak Tree. But with AC Milan, we are in a situation where they're also American-owned, Jerry Cardinale, Redbirds, and it's not going too bad there, at least on the books. They made a profit last year. 4 million euros they cleared from the latest reports on Calcio Finanza. So it's going well there. They didn't even have to sell Rafael Leao to make the big bucks. So they've done well. Haven't made a massive profit. I think the most profitable was Napoli. And this week, we've got a situation where Milan with a new coach, probably there's a bit of a crisis there in terms of the results on the pitch, but they've got a chance to make it 3 derby wins over Inter in a row this season. And they've got a chance to prove the naysayers wrong. A chance for Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who is the front man, he's the senior advisor to Jerry Cardinale, to say his piece. Maybe you can see those looks that he's sitting in the stands during the game. He's a very serious character. We all know that he likes to joke off the pitch in the dressing room. He's kind of their spiritual leader. They've now taken him out of that playing role. He's the front man. He's taken over from the great Paolo Maldini. That's what the Cardinales were brave enough to do that. I don't know if Silvio Berlusconi, if he was still in charge of Milan, would he have made that decision to take out a Paolo Maldini type? I'm just not sure.
I don't think that if Berlusconi was still in charge of Milan, he would have been happy with not spending over £20 million on a striker for years, as they've done now. But hey, as a fan, if you're a Milan fan, you're disappointed with it. There's no, there is no two ways about it. You want the team to compete right at the top. But there is also the other side of the coin. The Cardinals saying, yeah, well, we can compete if we keep splashing money, but then it's going to come to a point where financial fair play is going to sort of, come into play, and we're not going to be able to compete. Not because we can't, but because we won't be allowed to take part in European competitions. So you can see why the balance books are so important for them. It's just difficult though for when you look at the way Milan, carried on for 40 years, spending. No, I'm not talking about spending, by the way. I'm not talking about spending like Man City or PSG, but they were big spenders.
They don't have the ability either. They don't have the bank accounts for that.
No, Berlusconi said it when he sold it that, football was too expensive. And if it was too expensive for him, who owned, media companies, you name it.
Yeah.
Real estate and all that.
Well, he sold it, and then he went back to the Moneyball approach of going to get a third division club and bring them up back into Serie A. And I guess when you want to take that, transpose it into the Cardinale situation, Redbird situation, they've done that with Milan. They've come in and they bought it for a certain fee. They believe it's going to be valued at a specific amount, or that it should be valued at a specific amount. And that's where they're looking to the future. They can see into the future, something that perhaps Milan fans can't. They've got Ibrahimovic involved there, and we're going to see how that plays out for the rest of the season, because they need to move up if they want to play Champions League football at the end of this season. They need to be there again for the Champions League next season. That's going to bring in a whole another revenue.
But I think even at this stage, they've earned around 65 million euros. So if they don't qualify next season, that's a massive amount of money.
Yeah,
to
and
be
blow.
literally it would
It's
be
a
the
massive
difference
blow.
between them becoming a selling club and actually being able to like build on whatever platform they Conceição is trying to put together now. Because Conceição is only on the contract until the end of the season, and that is a lot of uncertainty around him. Not in the terms that Milan will get rid of him, but if you are a manager, you want to have certain sort of you want to know what you're going to be doing in 6 months, 12 months down the line. And if Milan they don't know what they're going to be able to make signings, you can't plan ahead. And if you can't plan ahead, then is the manager going to commit to a long-term project?
The benefits of foreign ownership into Serie A, we can see them now. At least I think they'll be brave enough. Maybe they've come in not knowing how Italy functions to the umpteenth degree, because we know it can be slow and tiresome and it can really grind you down just as a day-to-day Italian. But, coming in, they're willing to splash a bit of cash to throw at the councils, some legal disputes, at least to hash this out, try and get some stadiums going or renovate some stadiums, bring that, I don't want to say American game day mentality. I'm not sure it's going to go to that level. I don't know if the Italians, the core of the fans that go to these games, they're Italian citizens. They're not used to the fanfare and the big Super Bowl style events, but just tweaking it a little bit to make it more appealing for the foreign fan. We really do encourage people that live in the UK, the US, yes, watch Serie B on Destination Calcio TV app, but if you want to go to Italy, we're also paving that way for you. We're trying to help you out with a few of our articles that we've done in the past, the Calcio Weekenders and the Binge. We really recommend you to go and experience that in Italy. The food, everything's sensational there. And I guess these foreign owners are helping pave that way into the country. Inter, American-owned. Milan, American-owned. They're about to go at it this weekend. We're going to be there, boys. The Milan Derby della Madonnina. So, are you pumped?
Oh, looking forward
Just
to
a
it.
little bit?
It's-
Yeah.
It's bucket list stuff, the Milan Derby, isn't it? I've been to the San Siro watching football before and never got to see the Milan Derby.
Oh, we got there earlier in the season. If you haven't seen that, go and check out our socials. Rewind, scroll down, have a look at our Instagram, also our Twitter. Follow us, please. Subscribe on YouTube and download the app, of course. Emmet, what was your favorite thing about the last time we were there? Is it your favorite ground? I believe it is.
Yeah, it's. I've been to a lot of stadiums all over the world, but San Siro still, for all the rough around the edges feel to it, it's still just when you come out of the subway and you just see this mammoth spaceship in front of you with the red girders on top and the swirls. I don't know what the architectural name for them are, but you know what I mean. The swirls.
Sounds like an expert. Emmet Gates.
I'm not going to get a job in architecture anytime soon. But
Well, we'll be doing that. We'll be taking Dan this weekend. We did go at the start of the season.
We did, yeah.
When we went to Novara for the Serie A Legends game to see Roberto Baggio. Yes. We also went into the museum at the San Siro. So there is a museum at the San Siro. It's going to be a massive game. It's Inter, the away side, Milan, the home side. Huge occasion. Follow us on our socials as we go through Milan. We're going to be there all weekend. We will take you through it next week when we're back for the podcast. We might even have a little bonus pod for you. Everything you need to know about Milan coming up. I think we'll leave it there, boys. Back next week. That's it from me, David Ferrini, Emmet Gates, and Dan Cancian in the studio today. You can contact us on all our personal X accounts or go to Destination Calcio page at DSTN Calcio. Different amount of characters you can have on Twitter. For everything Italian football and culture at DSTN Calcio. Looking ahead on the TV Destination Calcio website, the app, you can watch Serie B this week and 3 games. I might go through a list of the games before we go because we've got a massive one on Friday night. Be sure to join us every Thursday, of course. But Pisa, this is the Pisa shirt here. Drop the pen. Pisa, this is match worn, boys. Up against Palermo, this is match worn as well. We might just bring these down and have a look. Le Douane up against Toure. This is what we're doing this weekend. We can smell the sweat on these. Match worn. We brought them in for you, and I think we'll give these away at some stage during the season as well. So, Pisa hosting. It's Pippo Inzaghi, isn't it? Up against
It is.
Yeah, up against Alessio Dionisi. They've just got in Magnani as one of their latest defenders. You can find out all the news. We do write-ups on Serie B as well. These two fine journalists doing that. So be sure to join us every Thursday on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, YouTube for the next Calcio FC podcast. I'm David Ferrini. So thanks for joining. Thanks to Emmet Gates and Dan Cancian. And remember, the destination is always Calcio.